It started with a car crash. I was the passenger. We were driving home from school, my brother, Liam, behind the wheel, me in the front seat, headphones in, half listening to him talk about some internship Mom was pressuring him to apply for. Then there was the screech of tires, the sudden jerk of the wheel, and the sound of metal tearing. I remember blood, mine, pain, glass. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. Then blackness. When I woke up, it wasn't to my parents crying or holding my hand. It was to fluorescent lights and the smell of antiseptic. My arms were strapped to IVs, and my torso ached like it had been ripped open and sewn back together. I blinked slowly, trying to understand where I was. My mouth felt dry. I tried to speak, but no words came out, only a low groan. The nurse noticed I was conscious and called someone. A few moments later, my mom and dad walked in, but not with the panic or relief of parents who nearly lost their daughter. They looked tired, not from worry, from inconvenience. "She's awake," my mom said to the doctor coldly, not to me. She didn't hold my hand. My dad didn't meet my eyes. The doctor smiled at me, relieved. "You've been through a major surgery. You lost a kidney in the accident, but you're stable now. We saved you." I tried to ask about Liam, but my throat burned. The nurse gave me ice chips. When I finally managed, my mother answered like she was bored. "He's fine. He walked away with scratches. You, on the other hand, will have to stay a while." She didn't seem upset, just annoyed. The days blurred. I was stuck in that hospital bed, trying to piece myself back together, body and mind. Liam didn't visit once. Neither did my parents, except when they had to. I thought maybe it was the shock, maybe the guilt, maybe they didn't know how to process what had happened, until the night I woke up and everything changed. It was late. I had trouble sleeping, the pain too sharp, the room too cold. I was half dozing when I heard voices outside my door. I was hooked to fluids, weak, but awake enough to listen. It was my mom and dad, talking to the doctor, whispering, "So, you're saying if we take her other kidney?" My mother's voice. "She wouldn't survive that," the doctor replied firmly. "She's already lost one. Removing the second would mean—" "But Liam needs it," my dad interrupted. "He's the one with a future. She's just a girl. She doesn't even know what she wants in life. She'll never be able to carry much or run. She's already limited," my mother added flatly. "This would be a sacrifice that means something." The doctor was stunned. "You're talking about killing your daughter." "She'd be doing something good for once," my mom snapped. I couldn't breathe. My own parents were trying to offer me as a donor to save Liam. They hadn't asked me. They hadn't told me. They were planning it, behind closed doors. My stomach turned. I pulled the sheets up over my face and tried to stay still. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip the IVs out and run. But I couldn't even lift my arm. Tears streamed into my pillow. I had always known they loved Liam more. He was the golden boy, the one they bragged about. I was always the afterthought, but I never imagined they'd be willing to end my life, just to keep his perfect little future alive. They left. I waited until morning to speak, and I decided right then I would get out. I would live, but not just survive. I would make sure they never forgot what they tried to do to me. Not ever. The next morning, I asked the nurse, quietly, if I could speak to the hospital social worker. I didn't say why. I just told her I felt unsafe. The nurse nodded with a flicker of concern in her eyes. Something in my voice must have told her this wasn't about pain or recovery. This was survival. By that afternoon, I was sitting, barely, propped up in bed, while a kind-faced woman named Judith sat across from me with a notepad and the softest voice I'd ever heard. I told her everything. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I was too numb. I just spoke in a low voice, careful with my words. "My parents asked a doctor to take my remaining kidney for my brother. They said I wasn't worth as much." Judith blinked once, then closed her notepad. That was all I needed to say. That day changed everything. I didn't see my parents again for a week. Judith and the hospital filed an ethics complaint. A protective order was placed on my room. My medical decisions could no longer be accessed or altered by my family. I had never felt so terrified, yet so free. Judith helped me make arrangements. I wasn't 18 yet, just a few months shy. But with a judge's permission and the records from the hospital's audio system, which had picked up parts of that conversation outside my door, I was granted temporary legal separation from my parents. They couldn't touch me. Not legally, not physically. When my parents found out, they raged. They stormed into the hospital waiting room and tried to demand access. Security escorted them out. I watched from my window as my mother pointed her finger at the nurse's desk, screaming, "She's brainwashing our daughter! That girl belongs to us!" I didn't belong to them anymore. Not after what they said. Not after what they planned. The news spread quietly among staff. "The kidney girl," they called me. A few nurses cried when they heard. One doctor came in and placed a hand on mine and said, "You deserve to live, on your own terms." After 3 weeks, I was discharged into foster care. It wasn't glamorous. The apartment was small, the mattress thin, but it was safe. Safe was everything. I finished high school online while recovering. I worked nights at a bookstore and saved every penny. I refused college help, even when social services offered. I didn't want anything that came with a string. I wanted full control of my life. I eventually changed my last name. I took my great-grandmother's maiden name, Olson, a name that had no connection to those people who called themselves my family. Years passed, quietly, but I never forgot what they tried to do. Not when I got my first job at a healthcare startup. Not when I rose through the ranks in 3 years to become head of operations. Not when, by 24, I became part owner in the company I helped build. And certainly not when a familiar name popped up in an executive candidate search for our newest open role. Liam, my brother. I stared at the resume like it was a ghost. He had no idea. He had no idea I was still alive. Or thriving. He thought I'd disappeared into some system, that I'd withered away, voiceless. Maybe he even believed I'd died, that Mom and Dad got what they wanted. But I hadn't died. I'd just been quietly building the future they never believed I could have. And now, I was going to be the one holding his fate. I invited him to an in-person interview. He accepted. He didn't recognize my name on the invitation. Of course not. And he certainly didn't expect to walk into the executive boardroom and find me sitting at the head of the table, looking straight into his eyes. His mouth dropped. "You," he stammered. "You're alive?" I smiled. Alive, healthy, and no longer yours to silence. Liam didn't know where to look. His eyes darted from the marble floor to the gold-trimmed glass wall behind me to the framed awards I'd earned. But they always came back to my face, my calm expression, my strength, the strength they never believed I could have. You're the COO, he said again, his voice cracking. I leaned forward, fingers laced. Yes, of the company you're begging to join, the one you sent a resume to without doing a background check. He tried to smile. Look, I was just following opportunities. I didn't know. You didn't know I'd survive? I asked. Or that I'd become more than a donor on a hospital bed? Liam opened his mouth, then closed it. No words. I read your resume, I continued, tapping it with one manicured finger. Your grades are average, your experience is thin, but the entitlement, that's fully intact. He swallowed hard. Listen, I didn't know what Mom and Dad said. I wasn't part of... They came to the hospital and told a doctor to take my organ without asking me, I said, my voice rising now. They said, she's not as important as Liam. I heard them. I was awake. Do you know what that does to someone at 17? He looked down. Tell me, Liam, how does it feel to interview for a job owned by the girl you thought would vanish? Who you thought was disposable? Please, he whispered. I need this job. Things haven't been easy. I stood up, slowly, walked to the window. The city shimmered below us. My voice was cold. You can tell Mom and Dad I heard every word. and that now I'm in a position they'll never reach. Then I turned to face him. As for this job. A pause. I created a policy here, one that protects people who've been betrayed by their families, who were treated like nothing. So no, Liam, you don't get to wear a suit and walk into this company and act like nothing happened. His face turned red. You're ruining my life. I tilted my head. Oh? You mean like you all tried to ruin mine? By stealing my body, my freedom, my future? He glared. You always played victim. I leaned in just enough so he could hear every word. No, Liam, I was the victim. Now, I'm the ending. He stormed out. I stood there for a moment after he left. Quiet, peaceful. And then I called HR. Blacklist the name, permanently, and send a notification to our partner firms. They won't be hiring him either. That night, I went home to a modest apartment overlooking the lake. I didn't need a mansion. I had something more valuable. Peace. I sat on the balcony and read the email from the hospital. They were launching a campaign to protect minors from unethical parental control in organ donation. They were naming it after me. The Claire Protection Protocol. Claire. My new name. My real name. Not the one my parents gave me. The one I chose when I freed myself. A week later, a letter came in the mail. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. It was from my parents. Inside was a desperate plea. They were in financial ruin. My brother couldn't find work. They were losing their house. They asked if I'd help as a daughter. I wrote back, I was your daughter when I was unconscious in a hospital bed. You chose your son. So now, live with that choice. I never heard from them again. But sometimes, late at night, I think about that moment in the hospital, when I was half awake, tubes in my arm, and heard my own mother ask a doctor, "Can we take her organ for our son?" And I smile, because they thought that was the end of my story. They had no idea. It was only the beginning. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you